The most dangerous woman in the world is a pregnant wife who finally stops begging to be loved. The fax machine started printing at exactly 11:47 p.m., the mechanical sound slicing through the silence of Blackwood Holdings' executive floor like a warning nobody understood yet. One page. Then another. Thick ivory paper sliding into the tray beneath the Silver Company logo, while the night receptionist stared at the sender's name and felt her stomach tighten. Evelyn Blackwood. Upstairs, the lights of downtown Manhattan shimmered against the rain-soaked windows, cold and distant like diamonds at the bottom of the ocean. Across the city, Damian Blackwood sat in the private suite of the Ashford Hotel, loosening his tie with the careless confidence of a man who believed the world belonged to him. At 38, Damian had everything magazines admired and shareholders worshipped. A 9-figure real estate empire. Charity gala covers. Tailored Italian suits. The kind of face that looked trustworthy on business channels. Beside him, Sabrina Vale leaned against the marble kitchen island scrolling through photos from a yacht party earlier that afternoon, her diamond bracelet catching the warm amber light. She smiled when Damian's phone buzzed. "Your wife again?" she asked lightly. Damian barely looked at the screen before declining the call. "She's emotional lately," he muttered, pouring bourbon into a crystal glass. "Pregnancy hormones." Sabrina laughed softly, but Damian's attention shifted when his assistant called again less than 30 seconds later. This time the woman's voice sounded nervous. "Sir, your wife sent divorce papers to the office." Silence. Complete silence. Even the rain against the windows seemed to disappear for one strange second. Then Damian laughed. A low, arrogant laugh from a man who had never truly feared consequences. "She won't do anything," he said, swirling the bourbon slowly. "Evelyn likes drama, not endings." But 2 miles away, in the massive Blackwood penthouse overlooking Central Park, Evelyn sat completely alone in the dark. No music. No television. No tears. Just the faint glow of Manhattan lights reflecting against the floor-to-ceiling windows and the soft ticking of the antique clock Damian once bought at an auction to impress investors. Her hand rested gently against her 8-month pregnant belly as the baby moved beneath her silk sweater, small steady kicks reminding her that she wasn't alone no matter how empty the room felt. The dining table in front of her was covered in neatly organized folders. Bank statements. Property transfers. Offshore account summaries. Printed emails. Evidence. So much evidence. Evelyn reached for the final envelope beside her laptop, the one Damian hadn't seen yet. Her fingers trembled slightly, but not from fear anymore. Fear had disappeared 3 nights ago in the hallway outside Damian's private study. That was the night she heard her husband's voice through the cracked door, while Sabrina laughed quietly in the background. "After the baby comes," Damian had said calmly, "she signs the custody agreement. Then the doctors handle the rest. Postpartum instability. Emotional exhaustion. Nobody questions a billionaire protecting his child." Evelyn closed her eyes as the memory replayed again like a knife twisting slowly under her ribs. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't even Sabrina. It was how casually Damian discussed erasing her from her own child's future, like deleting an unwanted line from a business contract. The baby kicked again, harder this time. Evelyn lowered her head and whispered softly into the darkness. "I promise you, he will never control us again." Then she picked up the pen beside the divorce papers and signed the final page with a hand that no longer shook. People always assumed Evelyn Blackwood was weak because she spoke softly, smiled politely, and never interrupted her husband in public. They saw the elegant blonde woman standing beside Damian at charity galas in custom maternity dresses and thought she was lucky. Lucky to live in a $12 million penthouse overlooking Central Park. Lucky to ride in black SUVs with private security. Lucky to be married to one of the most powerful real estate developers in New York City. But the truth about quiet women is that people rarely notice how much they are carrying until the weight finally breaks something. At 6:15 the next morning, Evelyn stood barefoot in the kitchen watching coffee drip slowly into a porcelain cup while the city outside disappeared beneath gray winter rain. She had not slept. The divorce papers were already downtown sitting on Damien's desk, waiting like a loaded weapon no one knew had been fired yet. Her phone buzzed against the marble counter. 32 missed calls. Most from Damien. 3 from Sabrina. 2 from his mother. Evelyn stared at the screen without expression before flipping the phone face down again. The baby shifted gently beneath her ribs, and she closed her eyes for a second as another wave of exhaustion rolled through her body. Pregnancy had changed everything about her life during the past 8 months. The nausea. The insomnia. The constant pressure against her spine. But nothing hurt as much as realizing the father of her child had been planning her removal like a business strategy. A cold gust of wind rattled the windows. Somewhere downstairs, Manhattan traffic groaned through the wet streets while financial headlines flashed across giant screens in Times Square. Blackwood Holdings stock was up 3% that morning. Investors called Damien a genius. Forbes called him visionary. But 6 years earlier, before the magazine covers and billion-dollar projects, Damien Blackwood had been 32 years old, drowning in debt, and one bank meeting away from collapse. Evelyn remembered every detail because she had been there before anyone else believed in him. Back then she worked as a financial analyst at Sterling Capital, known for solving impossible restructuring cases that older executives avoided. Damien arrived at the office carrying blueprints and desperation hidden beneath an expensive navy suit. Everyone else rejected him. Evelyn did not. She stayed at work until 2 in the morning rebuilding his financial models line by line. She found hidden tax advantages, negotiated investor confidence strategies, designed the recovery structure that eventually saved Blackwood Holdings from bankruptcy. Damien used to look at her like she had rescued his future with her bare hands. "You are the smartest person in every room," he whispered once during their first year of marriage while they danced alone in their unfinished penthouse surrounded by construction dust and champagne glasses. Evelyn believed him then. She believed every promise. Every kiss against her forehead. Every late-night conversation about building a family together. The memory almost made her laugh now. Her laptop chimed softly on the counter, dragging her back to the present. New email. Julian Cross. The subject line read, "Emergency injunction approved." Evelyn opened the message carefully. Attached were court confirmations freezing several account transfers Damien attempted during the past month. Julian moved fast. Faster than anyone she had ever met. The attorney had dark eyes, perfect suits, and the unsettling calm of a man who enjoyed watching powerful people panic. Last night, after reviewing her evidence for less than 20 minutes, he leaned back in his office chair and asked only one question. "Does your husband know you kept copies?" Evelyn remembered shaking her head slowly. Julian smiled for the first time then, sharp and humorless. "Good," he said quietly. "Because surprise is the only thing men like Damien Blackwood never prepare for." Her phone buzzed again. This time Damien left a voicemail. Evelyn hesitated before pressing play. His voice filled the silent kitchen, smooth at first, controlled, practiced. "Evelyn, stop this nonsense and call me back." A pause. Then colder. Harder. "You are making a very emotional mistake." Evelyn listened to the message twice before deleting it forever. At 9:12 that morning, the doors of Blackwood Holdings opened with their usual polished elegance, but the atmosphere inside the building felt different. Tense. Sharp. Like the air before a thunderstorm nobody wanted to acknowledge. Employees whispered behind glass office walls while assistants avoided eye contact, and phones vibrated nonstop across the executive floor. News traveled fast in Manhattan's financial world, especially when it involved powerful men losing control of their private lives. Damien Blackwood walked through the lobby wearing a charcoal overcoat. And the same expression he used during hostile acquisitions. Calm. Untouchable. Dangerous. The security guards straightened instantly when they saw him, but Damien barely noticed. His jaw remained tight from the moment he stepped out of the car because deep down, something about Evelyn's silence unsettled him more than screaming ever could. She had not answered a single call. Not one text. Not even after his mother threatened to handle the situation personally. That was not like Evelyn. Normally she apologized first. Smoothed things over first. Protected his image first. The elevator ride to the 34th floor felt longer than usual. Damien loosened his cufflinks slowly while his reflection stared back from the mirrored walls. Successful men like Damien spent their entire lives studying weakness in other people. He knew how investors panicked, how competitors lied, how politicians folded under pressure. But he had made one critical mistake with Evelyn. He confused patience with dependence. His assistant Melissa stood outside his office clutching a tablet against her chest the moment the elevator doors opened. Her face looked pale. "Good morning, sir," she said carefully. Damien kept walking. "Where are the papers?" Melissa hesitated for half a second too long. "Inside your office, sir. The legal department has been waiting since 8. Damien pushed open the glass doors expecting drama. Tears. Emotional threats. Maybe a desperate attempt to negotiate. Instead, he found absolute precision. The thick envelopes sat centered on his desk beside a second stack of documents arranged with terrifying neatness. No handwritten note. No emotional message. No begging. Just silence. Damien removed his coat slowly and sat down behind the desk that overlooked the Manhattan skyline. Then he opened the envelope. Divorce petition. Emergency custody filing. Financial disclosure demands. His expression hardened with every page. By the fourth document, the irritation in his eyes started shifting into something else. Confusion. Damien grabbed another sheet. Then another. Asset transfer reports. Hidden holding companies. Offshore account summaries connected to Blackwood. Subsidiaries even his internal auditors had not flagged yet. His pulse slowed dangerously. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. Melissa remained frozen near the doorway. "There is more, sir." Damien looked up sharply. "What do you mean, more?" Melissa swallowed hard before placing a black flash drive carefully onto the desk between them. "This arrived 20 minutes after the papers. It was addressed to the board of directors." Silence swallowed the room again. Damien stared at the tiny flash drive like it might explode. "Who delivered it?" "Courier service, sir." Damien's jaw tightened. "Did anyone see the contents?" Melissa lowered her eyes. "Legal viewed part of it before contacting me." Damien stood abruptly, anger flashing across his face for the first time that morning. "You let legal open something addressed to me?" "It was marked urgent corporate liability." Damien exhaled sharply through his nose, forcing himself calm. Control was everything. Men like him survived because they controlled the room before anyone else understood the game being played. But for the first time in years, Damien felt something slipping through his fingers. He plugged the drive into his laptop. One audio file appeared on the screen. No title. No date. Just 47 minutes of recorded conversation. Damien clicked play. Static crackled softly before his own voice filled the office speakers. "After the baby comes, she signs the custody agreement." Damien froze instantly. Across the room, Melissa looked horrified. The recording continued. "Postpartum instability is easy to document if the doctors cooperate." Sabrina's laughter echoed faintly in the background. Damien lunged forward and slammed the laptop shut so hard the sound echoed against the glass walls. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then his office phone rang. Melissa glanced at the screen and went pale again. "Sir," she whispered carefully. "The board wants an emergency meeting at noon." By 11:40 a.m., the rain over Manhattan had turned heavier, streaking against the towering windows of Blackwood Holdings while tension spread through the executive floor like smoke. Nobody spoke louder than a whisper anymore. Assistants avoided eye contact. Junior employees pretended to work while secretly refreshing financial news feeds under their desks. Something was happening inside the company, and everyone could feel it. Damien stood alone in his office staring down at the city 34 floors below, while the audio recording replayed endlessly in his head. His own voice. Calm. Calculated. Destroying him sentence by sentence. He had spent years building the image of a disciplined billionaire family man. Investors trusted him because he looked controlled, reliable, untouchable. Now one recording threatened to crack that entire illusion open in a single afternoon. The office doors swung open without warning. Sabrina Vale stepped inside wearing oversized sunglasses and a cream-colored designer coat despite the storm outside. Normally she carried herself with effortless confidence, but today her movements looked rushed. Nervous. "Why are reporters calling me?" she demanded quietly the second the doors shut behind her. Damien did not answer immediately. His fingers tightened around the edge of his desk instead. Sabrina removed the sunglasses slowly, revealing panic hiding beneath carefully applied makeup. "Damien, what is going on?" He finally turned toward her. "Evelyn recorded us." Silence crashed into the room. Sabrina blinked twice like her brain refused to process the words. "Recorded what exactly?" Damien walked toward the conference table where the printed documents still sat scattered across the polished black surface. He tossed one folder toward her. "Everything." Sabrina opened the folder with trembling fingers. Custody injunction notices. Financial investigations. Legal requests. Then she saw the transcript pages. Her face lost color instantly. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Damien watched her carefully. "You told me she never suspected anything." Sabrina snapped her head upward. "Because she did not." But even Sabrina no longer sounded convinced. The truth was beginning to settle over both of them like freezing rain. Evelyn had known far more than either of them imagined. For how long? Neither could answer that question anymore. Damien walked back toward the windows, forcing himself calm again. Panic made people sloppy. Sloppy people lost wars. "Julian Cross is behind this," he muttered darkly. Sabrina frowned. "The attorney?" Damien nodded once. "He does not take divorce cases unless there's leverage worth destroying someone over." Sabrina's breathing grew uneven. "Can they use the recording legally?" Damien did not answer fast enough. That terrified her more than anything. Across the city, Evelyn sat inside Julian Cross's private office high above Madison Avenue while thunder rolled faintly outside the glass walls. The office smelled like leather, coffee, and expensive paper. Calm. Controlled. Just like the man himself. Julian reviewed another stack of documents, while Evelyn rested one hand protectively against her stomach. She looked exhausted but different now. Clearer somehow. Like someone waking up after years underwater. "He listened to the recording already," Julian said casually without looking up. Evelyn's eyes lifted slowly. "How do you know?" Julian allowed himself the faintest smile. "Because men like Damien cannot resist hearing themselves explain why they believe they are smarter than everyone else." Evelyn stared quietly at the rain outside. "I used to think he loved me." Julian finally looked at her then. "Not with pity." "Never pity." "No," he said evenly. "He loved being admired by you. That is not the same thing." The room fell silent except for distant thunder vibrating against the windows. Evelyn swallowed carefully as the baby shifted beneath her ribs again. She still remembered the version of Damien who danced barefoot with her in an unfinished penthouse 6 years earlier. The man who kissed her forehead during late nights at the office. The man who promised she would never face life alone again. That version of him felt dead now. Or maybe it never existed at all. Her phone buzzed softly on the desk between them. Damien calling again. Julian glanced at the screen. "Do not answer yet." Evelyn looked uncertain. "Why?" Julian closed the final folder and slid it toward her slowly. "Because right now he still thinks this is emotional." He paused for one cold second before continuing. "The moment he realizes it is strategic, he becomes dangerous. No billionaire fears losing money the way he fears losing control." At exactly noon, the boardroom doors closed behind Damien Blackwood with a low mechanical click that sounded strangely final. 12 executives sat around the 40-foot walnut table beneath cold recessed lighting while rain hammered softly against the skyline windows behind them. Usually Damien owned rooms like this. Usually people straightened their posture when he entered. Usually nobody questioned him twice. But today nobody smiled. Nobody relaxed. Several board members avoided eye contact entirely while others stared down at printed legal packets sitting in front of them like unexploded bombs. Damien remained standing at the head of the table, one hand resting against the leather chair reserved for him. Calm face. Controlled breathing. Perfect posture. Years of corporate warfare had trained him well. Never show weakness before the first strike. Arthur Whitmore, the oldest board member and one of Blackwood Holdings' earliest investors, cleared his throat heavily. We received serious allegations this morning. Damien's expression never changed. Personal matters are being exaggerated by emotional circumstances. Across the table, another executive slid the transcript pages forward slowly. Is this your voice? Silence tightened around the room instantly. Damien looked at the papers but did not touch them. Private conversations can be manipulated. Arthur leaned back in his chair carefully. Can they manipulate federal account investigations too? That landed harder. Damien finally sat down. Slow. Measured. Dangerous. My wife is pregnant and unstable right now. Her attorney is weaponizing family conflict to pressure a settlement. Some heads nodded uncertainly. Others did not. Damien noticed every reaction immediately because powerful men survive by measuring doubt before it fully forms. Then the boardroom television screen flickered alive unexpectedly. Static. Confusion spread across the table. What is this? Damien snapped sharply. Nobody answered because the system had not been activated from inside the room. A video call connection appeared instead. Julian Cross. Calm gray suit. Cold eyes. Manhattan skyline behind him. Several executives visibly stiffened the second they recognized him. Julian did not smile. Good afternoon, he said evenly. Damien stood instantly. You do not belong in this meeting. Julian ignored him completely. At the request of Mrs. Evelyn Blackwood, my office has submitted evidence to federal investigators concerning financial concealment, shareholder misinformation, and custodial conspiracy. The room went dead silent. One board member actually removed his glasses slowly as if hearing the words more clearly might somehow make them less catastrophic. Damien's voice lowered dangerously. This is extortion. Julian tilted his head slightly. No, Mr. Blackwood. Extortion requires demands. Then he slid a file toward the camera. This is documentation. The television screen switched instantly to scan financial records. Offshore holdings. Hidden transfers. Shell corporations connected to Blackwood subsidiaries. Dates. Signatures. Numbers. Precise. Clean. Impossible to dismiss as emotional revenge. Damien felt his pulse hammer once beneath his collarbone. Not because the documents existed. Because Evelyn had found them. Across town, inside Julian's office, Evelyn watched the live board feed from a leather chair with both hands wrapped around warm tea she had barely touched. The baby shifted gently beneath her coat while thunder rolled faintly outside. She looked pale from exhaustion, but her eyes remained steady on the screen. Damien still looked handsome even now. Controlled. Intelligent. Dangerous. That used to make her feel safe. Now it made her feel cold. He is going to come after me harder now, she whispered quietly. Julian stood beside the windows with one hand in his pocket. Yes. Evelyn looked up slowly. That does not worry you. Julian finally turned toward her fully. Mrs. Blackwood, men like your husband survive because nobody ever forces them to hear the word no. His expression remained unreadable for one long second. You just did it publicly. Back inside the boardroom, Arthur Whitmore removed his glasses carefully and looked directly at Damien for the first time in years without admiration. Did you hide company assets from this board? Damien's jaw tightened. Everything I did protected this company. Arthur nodded once, almost sadly. That was not the question. The silence afterward felt heavier than shouting ever could. Then Damien's phone buzzed against the conference table. One message. Unknown number. He opened it instinctively. A single ultrasound photo filled the screen beneath one sentence. You will never teach my child to fear me the way I feared you. For the first time that day, Damien Blackwood stopped looking angry. He looked afraid. The news broke at 2:17 p.m. Blackwood Holdings stock dropped 11% in less than 20 minutes, while financial anchors on giant studio screens repeated the same phrase over and over again. Corporate misconduct allegations. Traders shouted across exchange floors. Phones exploded inside Manhattan law firms. Social media filled with blurry screenshots of leaked transcripts and whispered speculation about the downfall of one of New York's most admired millionaires. And through all of it, Evelyn Blackwood remained completely silent. She sat beside the tall windows in Julian Cross's office wrapped in a cream cashmere coat while cold rain slid down the glass behind her in silver streaks. Her tea had gone cold hours ago. The baby moved softly beneath her ribs every few minutes, steady and alive, grounding her whenever panic threatened to rise again. Because beneath the calm surface, fear still existed. Not fear of losing Damien anymore. That version of fear had already died. This was different. This was the terrifying realization that she had finally stepped into a war powerful enough to destroy lives publicly. Julian stood near his desk reviewing incoming messages on his phone without visible emotion. 3 board members already resigned, he said evenly. Federal investigators contacted Blackwood Holdings legal counsel 30 minutes ago. Evelyn looked down at her wedding ring resting on the table beside her untouched cup. Platinum. Simple. Heavy. Damien picked it himself years ago because he once claimed diamonds felt too performative. Funny how. Clearly she remembered that now. Do you think he ever loved me at all? She asked quietly. Julian did not answer immediately. Outside, thunder rolled faintly across the Manhattan skyline while traffic lights reflected against rain-soaked streets 30 floors below. Finally he spoke. I think your husband loved being needed. Evelyn swallowed hard. The distinction hurt more than she expected. Across town, Damien stormed through the private hallway outside the boardroom while executives scattered out of his path without speaking. His phone rang constantly now. Investors. Attorneys. Journalists. His public relations director left 6 voicemails in under 10 minutes begging him not to release any statements yet. Damien ignored all of them. Rage pulsed beneath his skin with every step because he finally understood something impossible to accept. Evelyn had not reacted emotionally. She had prepared strategically. Sabrina waited inside his office near the windows, her face pale beneath flawless makeup. My agent says reporters are outside my building, she whispered the second Damien entered. He ripped off his tie violently enough to send it across the room. Then stay inside. Sabrina stared at him carefully. Do not speak to me like this is my fault. Damien laughed once. Cold. Sharp. Unrecognizable. You told me she was weak. Sabrina crossed her arms tightly. She was. Damien stopped moving then. Silence swallowed the office again. Because somewhere beneath the anger, a horrifying thought had begun forming inside his mind. Maybe Evelyn was never weak. Maybe she had simply loved him enough to stay gentle until now. His office television flickered again with another financial update. Blackwood Holdings down 14%. Analysts questioning leadership stability. One commentator even used the phrase corporate ethics crisis live on air. Damien muted the screen instantly, but the damage was already done. Public perception was shifting in real time. The perfect image he spent years polishing was cracking apart faster than he could control it. His phone buzzed again. This time the caller identification froze him completely. Evelyn. Damien answered immediately. Enough games? He said coldly. What do you want? Silence met him first. Soft breathing. Then Evelyn's calm voice finally came through the speaker. quieter than he remembered. Do you know what scared me most? Damien's jaw tightened. Evelyn, not the affair, she interrupted gently. Not the lies. Not even hearing you plan to take my baby away. Her voice remained heartbreakingly calm. It was realizing I spent 6 years making excuses for someone who never once protected my peace. Damien looked out across the storm-covered skyline, suddenly unable to speak. Evelyn continued softly. You taught me that silence keeps powerful men comfortable. A long pause followed. Now you are finally learning what silence can destroy. Then the line disconnected. Damien lowered the phone slowly while thunder shook the windows behind him. For the first time in his entire career, he no longer knew what move came next. By sunset, Manhattan no longer viewed Evelyn Blackwood as a billionaire's emotional pregnant wife. She had become the woman who brought Blackwood Holdings to its knees in less than 12 hours without ever stepping in front of a camera. Every financial network in America was running the same footage now. Damien entering his office looking furious. Board members leaving emergency meetings in silence. Reporters shouting questions beneath umbrellas outside corporate headquarters while stock numbers bled red across giant digital screens. Inside Julian Cross's office, the television volume remained low, but the damage was impossible to ignore. Blackwood Holdings had lost nearly $2 billion in market value before closing bell. Evelyn sat quietly on the sofa with both hands resting beneath her stomach, while city lights flickered alive beyond the rain-covered windows. The baby had been unusually active all afternoon, small movements pressing against her ribs every few minutes like tiny reminders that her future still existed beyond the destruction unfolding outside. Julian walked into the room carrying another folder. The court approved temporary custody protections, he said evenly. Evelyn released a slow breath she did not realize she had been holding. So he cannot take the baby? Not without a long legal battle he is no longer positioned to win. The relief hit her harder than expected. For the first time in weeks, her chest loosened slightly. Not happiness. Not peace. But something close to safety. Julian placed the folder on the table beside her wedding ring, which still remained untouched exactly where she left it hours earlier. There is one more thing, he added carefully. Evelyn looked up immediately. What? Julian's expression darkened slightly. Damien scheduled a press conference tonight. Silence. Rain tapped softly against the windows while distant sirens echoed far below on Madison Avenue. Evelyn understood Damien well enough to know exactly what that meant. Control. Narrative. Damage management. Men like him never surrendered publicly without trying to reclaim the room first. He is going to paint me as unstable, she whispered quietly. Julian did not deny it. Probably. Evelyn lowered her gaze toward her stomach as fear crept back into her chest again. Pregnancy already made women vulnerable in the public eye. Emotional. Fragile. Irrational. Damien knew exactly how to weaponize those assumptions because for years he taught her to doubt her own instincts the second she became upset. Julian watched her carefully before speaking again. Do you trust me? Evelyn nodded once. Then let him speak first. Across town, camera flashes exploded outside Blackwood Holdings headquarters as Damien stepped behind a podium surrounded by lawyers and security personnel. Rain hammered against the black SUVs lining the curb, while reporters shouted over one another from behind barricades. Damien looked composed again. Controlled. The version of himself the public trusted. Mr. Blackwood, are the recordings authentic? Did your wife accuse you of fraud? Is Blackwood Holdings under federal investigation? Damien raised one hand calmly. The crowd quieted instantly. My family is experiencing a deeply personal matter during an emotionally difficult pregnancy, he began smoothly. Unfortunately, private conversations are being manipulated by outside parties seeking financial leverage. Several reporters exchanged skeptical looks immediately. Damien continued anyway. My wife has been under extraordinary emotional stress for months. Inside Julian's office, Evelyn went completely still. Her face lost color as she listened to the live broadcast. There it was. Exactly as expected. Calm public concern masking quiet destruction beneath it. Damien lowered his voice carefully at the podium, performing sympathy with practiced perfection. Despite everything, I remain committed to protecting my wife and unborn child. Julian muted the television instantly. Silence crashed into the room. Evelyn stared forward without blinking for several long seconds before whispering quietly, "He sounds so believable." Julian's expression never softened. "That is because he has rehearsed this version of himself for years." Evelyn swallowed hard as tears finally burned behind her eyes for the first time all day. Not because she missed Damien anymore, but because millions of strangers watching those broadcasts would probably believe him. Julian stepped closer slowly. "Look at me." Evelyn lifted her eyes. "People like Damien survive by controlling perception," he said calmly. "But perception shifts the moment evidence becomes undeniable." Almost on cue, his phone buzzed sharply in his hand. Julian glanced at the screen once before a rare smile touched the corner of his mouth. Small. Cold. Dangerous. "Well," he murmured quietly, "it appears your husband just made another mistake." Evelyn frowned slightly. "What happened?" Julian turned the phone toward her. A leaked hotel surveillance image had just appeared online across every major financial site in America. Damien and Sabrina entering the Ashford Hotel suite together the exact same night he publicly claimed he had been caring for his emotionally distressed pregnant wife. The internet turned against Damien Blackwood in less than 30 minutes. By 9 o'clock that night, the leaked hotel images had spread across every major news network, celebrity gossip account, and financial website in America. The headlines were brutal. Billionaire CEO accused of manipulating pregnant wife. Hidden affair exposed during corporate investigation. Investors panic. As Blackwood scandal deepens. Inside the penthouse suite at the Ashford Hotel, Sabrina Vale sat curled into the corner of a cream-colored sofa scrolling endlessly through comments, with trembling fingers. Every refresh made things worse. Her name was everywhere now. Former modeling contracts were disappearing by the hour. Luxury brands quietly unfollowed her accounts. One cosmetics company released a statement announcing they were reevaluating partnerships. Sabrina looked up sharply when Damien entered the room. He no longer looked polished. His tie was gone. His white dress shirt was wrinkled beneath his overcoat, and dark circles had settled beneath his eyes after a single catastrophic day. "Say something," Sabrina whispered. Damien ignored the television flashing headlines behind her and poured himself another drink with unsteady hands. "The board suspended my voting authority." Sabrina stared at him in disbelief. "What?" He swallowed the bourbon in one long burn before answering. "Temporary emergency action pending investigation." Silence crashed between them. The city lights outside the hotel windows looked colder now somehow, distant and unreachable beneath heavy rain clouds rolling across Manhattan. Sabrina slowly stood from the sofa. "You said this would never touch me." Damien laughed bitterly under his breath. "You think I planned this?" Sabrina crossed her arms tightly around herself. "No. But I think you underestimated your wife." Those words landed harder than she intended because Damien suddenly realized everybody kept saying the same thing now. Underestimated Evelyn. Weak women did not dismantle billion-dollar reputations in one day. Weak women did not prepare legal strategies while carrying a child and pretending everything was normal at dinner parties. Weak women did not survive years of emotional manipulation and still walk away with dignity intact. Across town, Evelyn stood alone in front of the tall windows inside Julian Cross's office while Manhattan glowed beneath the storm like scattered gold beneath black water. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass. Pale face. Tired eyes. 8 months pregnant with a child whose entire future had nearly been controlled by fear. She barely recognized herself anymore. Julian stepped quietly into the room holding another stack of legal updates. "The board called an emergency shareholder vote for tomorrow morning," he said calmly. Evelyn turned slowly. "Can they remove him permanently?" "If enough investors panic, yes." Evelyn lowered her eyes toward the city lights below. Years ago, Damien used to stand beside these same windows with his arms around her shoulders talking about building an empire together. Back then she believed success would make them stronger. Instead it made him crueler. More controlling. More obsessed with image than humanity. "Do you know the strange part?" she asked softly. Julian remained silent, letting her continue. "I kept thinking if I loved him better, he would become kinder again." Her voice cracked slightly for the first time. "I blamed myself for everything." Julian set the folders down carefully before answering. "People like Damien train others to confuse survival with loyalty." Evelyn closed her eyes briefly as the baby moved again beneath her coat. Then her phone buzzed softly in her hand. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello?" Heavy breathing met her first. Then Damien's voice finally came through, low and exhausted. "Evelyn, what do you want from me?" She looked out across Manhattan quietly while rain slid down the glass like tears the city refused to shed itself. "I wanted honesty," she answered softly. Silence. Damien exhaled shakily through the phone. "I can fix this." Evelyn almost smiled at that because even now, after everything collapsed around him, Damien still thought this was about public damage. Money. Reputation. Negotiation. "No," she whispered gently. "You can only survive it now." Another long silence followed before Damien finally asked the question he should have asked years ago. "When did you stop loving me?" Evelyn pressed one hand protectively against her stomach and stared at her own reflection in the dark glass. "The moment I realized our child would grow up learning fear from the man who was supposed to teach safety." Then she ended the call while thunder rolled across Manhattan one more time. 3 months later, the first snow of December drifted quietly across Manhattan like the city itself was finally exhaling after a long storm. The headlines that once dominated every screen had faded beneath newer scandals, newer disasters, newer names for the public to consume and forget. But inside the glass towers of New York's financial district, people still lowered their voices whenever they mentioned Damien Blackwood. Former CEO. Federal investigation. Corporate collapse. The man who once controlled every room now spent most days hidden behind lawyers and silence. Blackwood Holdings survived, but barely. Investors forced massive restructuring. Board members resigned. Luxury properties were sold quietly to stabilize debt exposure. Damien's photograph disappeared from magazine covers almost overnight, replaced by younger executives with cleaner reputations and safer stories. That was the cruel thing about power in America. The world worshipped successful men until the exact second it sensed weakness. Then it moved on without looking back. On the Upper East Side, soft piano music drifted through the ballroom of the Whitmore Children's Foundation Winter Gala while crystal chandeliers reflected gold light across marble floors and champagne glasses. Wealthy donors laughed softly beneath towering Christmas trees wrapped in silver ribbon, but attention shifted almost immediately when the ballroom doors opened. Evelyn stepped inside wearing a long ivory coat draped gently over one arm, while a newborn baby rested quietly against her chest beneath a cream cashmere blanket. Conversation slowed, then stopped entirely. She looked different now. Not because of the tailored dress or the elegance that money could buy. It was something quieter than beauty. Peace. Real peace. The kind women find only after surviving something that nearly erased them. Julian Cross walked beside her in a dark tuxedo, calm as always, though several guests visibly stiffened when they recognized him. Financial predators rarely attended charity galas unless history followed behind them. Camera flashes flickered softly near the entrance as whispers spread through the ballroom. "That is Evelyn Blackwood. She had the baby already? She looks incredible." But Evelyn barely noticed any of it. Her attention stayed on the tiny sleeping infant in her arms, small fingers curled peacefully against the blanket, while snow drifted outside beyond the ballroom windows. A little girl. Healthy. Safe. Free from the fear that once haunted Evelyn every morning she woke beside Damien. Arthur Whitmore approached slowly through the crowd holding a glass of champagne. The older man smiled warmly when he looked down at the baby. "She has your eyes," he said gently. Evelyn smiled for real this time. Small. Honest. I hope she keeps them. Arthur nodded thoughtfully before lowering his voice. You should know the board voted unanimously this morning. Evelyn already understood before he finished speaking. He is gone. Arthur exhaled carefully. Permanently. Silence settled around her for one strange second. Not victory. Not satisfaction. Just closure. Somewhere across the city, Damien Blackwood was probably sitting alone inside another expensive office trying to calculate exactly when everything slipped beyond his control. But Evelyn no longer needed those answers anymore. She spent too many years trying to understand a man who only understood power. Arthur gently touched the baby's tiny hand before stepping away into the crowd again. Across the ballroom, reporters suddenly turned toward the entrance as another guest arrived unexpectedly. Damien. The room changed instantly. Conversations faded. Smiles disappeared. Damien stood near the doorway wearing a dark wool coat dusted with snow, looking older than he had just 3 months earlier. Not ruined. Men like Damien rarely ended completely ruined. But diminished. Human. Vulnerable in a way he never allowed himself to be before. Security moved subtly toward him, uncertain whether he belonged there anymore. Damien's eyes found Evelyn immediately across the ballroom. Then the baby. For a brief second, something raw crossed his face. Regret, perhaps. Or grief. Maybe both. Evelyn looked at him calmly while her daughter slept peacefully against her chest. No hatred remained inside her now. Hatred required emotional change she no longer carried. Damien took one small step forward before security quietly stopped him near the entrance. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody caused a scene. The humiliation was quieter than that. Damien looked at Evelyn one final time as snow fell softly beyond the windows behind him. Then he lowered his eyes and walked back out into the Manhattan night alone. Evelyn adjusted the blanket gently around her daughter and kissed the baby's forehead while warm ballroom light surrounded them both. Because in the end, the cruelest revenge was never destroying a powerful man publicly. It was surviving him so completely that one day his absence finally felt peaceful.